Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of Eat This, Drink That, Season 2, Episode 3, with my boys, the crew, the squad, Ali Khan, famous celebrity TV host, and our local wine beverage expert who just bought a crap ton of wine yesterday, Steve Greer. We're going to have Steve Greer kicking off this episode. Steve, what is your drink that for today?
So we're leading up to Thanksgiving. I wanted to pick a region that was kind of a smorgasbord of types of wines, flavors, reds, whites, etc. It was easy to go straight to a river. So these are the rivers of wine. This is basically part one, but it's one of my favorites. It's the Loire Valley, which is basically the bottom of the upper third of France. It runs east to west, and it's so just below Paris, and it runs east to west.
That's the middle. Let's just say
let's say the middle.
The upper third is also known as the middle.
Let's go with the middle. And it runs basically the center of France all the way over to the western coast. But the range of wines is insane.
Oh, I'm looking it up right now. I see. That's okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So, and there's something for everybody. Now, because it's kind of in the middle of the continent, weather and climate are issues. Sometimes the grapes can't ripen all the way. There's a lot of hedging of bets that happen. So they'll make sweet wines. They'll make sparkling wines. So if it's a vintage where the grapes can't ripen very well, they're going to make sparkling. You're hedging your bets in the different zones. And I kind of break it up, or people break it up into 4 portions of the river. But there's whites, there's reds, sparkling, sweet wines. There is Sauvignon Blanc, Chenin Blanc, Melon de Bourgogne, and I know I mispronounced that because I always do. It's Muscadet. I'm missing Cabernet Franc.
Wow.
And then a bunch of other weird kind of, even some Pinot Noir is grown through there. There's Malbec, which is called Cot.
I always think of Spain. Malbec,
Yeah.
I always think of as Spanish, but also in the Loire Valley. And this is all a big river, right?
Yeah, it's all a river. There's great rivers all over Europe that are wine growing areas.
Okay.
So the Mosel in Germany, the Rhone in southeastern France.
Okay.
Even the Danube. And then, I know, we did this in season 2, episode 1. We talked about the Douro, which is from Porto all the way to close to Rioja. And then the Ebro, which is Rioja, that goes all the way down. I think it dumps out at near Barcelona. So there's great rivers all over, and a lot of tradition goes into growing grapes on these rivers. Water regulates the temperatures a little bit. In the case of Germany, you might have some sun reflection off the river that allows a little more ripening, because that's a very, very cold climate. And sometimes the grapes struggled to ripen. Granted, a lot of these former rules are kind of changing because of global warming. Areas that couldn't ripen every single year are ripening every single year. Wines, they're changing some of the way they're making the wines, what grapes they're growing, etc. But
for the most part, this is an area where the weather is tricky. I always figured with wine, like in California, wine does so well because the weather is like pretty chill, pretty consistent, more in the sweet spot. But Europe, which is kind of known to be the land of wine too, the weather is harder to deal with, more cumbersome, more of a burden.
Yeah, you might have a lot of cloud cover, so there's not a lot of sunshine. You might have frosts. You might have hail.
Which I think that benefits Northern California, right? That the fog that's involved is why there's Sonoma and Napa and Russian River. So that's a river in California. That's the only thing I can reference in my mind is as far as a river sort of terroir. for wine.
Well, that's why Caneros does so well with Chardonnay and Pinot Noir because the fog goes up there.
Mm.
It keeps the temperatures from getting too high.
Right.
The San Francisco Bay is a big temperature regulator. And then northern Anderson Valley on your way up into Mendocino,
I've been to Anderson.
Right. It's a lot of cloud cover. It's cold. Pinot Noir does really well, but it's a totally different Pinot Noir than, say, Russian River Pinot Noir, where the grapes ripen. So temperature, weather, and climate have a lot to say in viticulture. So weather is just what happens today, and climate is what happens on average over 10, 20 years.
So Loire Valley, tougher to predict. How do they make great wine if the weather is tricky?
You have different areas. So let's go all the way to the right, the far east. That'll be the first of the 4 quadrants. That's Sancerre and Pouilly Fume. So these are the famous Sauvignon Blanc appellations. Then you go into the middle right. That's Vouvray. This is Chenin Blanc, the home of Chenin Blanc. Then you go over a little bit towards the west coast, Anjou, Cabernet Franc territory. And I'm being very generic here, so we're missing a lot of other appellations that are going on. That area around Anjou, they also grow Chenin Blanc for sweet wines. And then the far left, over on the west coast, Muscadet, which is the perfect wine for having oysters.
Wow.
I mean, it's perfect. Any
Isn't
sort
that
of
like a dessert wine?
No, it's very dry and bracing.
What's
They even
wrong?
most of the whites will do Muscadet. They'll do Surly, so on the dead yeast in the whatever tank they did the fermentation, so that you're getting a little bit more texture. Because otherwise, it's pretty bracing. And these wines throughout the Loire are a little more delicate, lighter to mid-weight, very good acidity, and really perfect with food. But you can sit and just sip these too. Sauvignon Blanc, especially Sancerre, that's been popular for decades in the United States. And that's a cocktail wine, as well as a food wine. So I bought a lot.
Here we go.
Yeah. So I don't really have these right to left from territory, but I'll start to grab them. I have a couple Sancerres. So Sancerre and Pouilly Fume. These are the Sauvignon Blanc, and it's a different Sauvignon Blanc than, say, Bordeaux, or where they blend it with Semillon, and they can be kind of weighty and
how is it
waxy.
different than a Sauvignon Blanc I get in California or New Zealand, where it's like...
I was just about to say the best difference is New Zealand, because that's the quintessential Sauvignon Blanc for most wine drinkers. And New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is very good, but it is more jalapeno.
It's bright,
so when
like the New Zealand
went and said jalapeno. I love it.
Yeah.
New Zealand.
So when New Zealand, when it first came out, the phrase was cat pee on a gooseberry bush.
There is you're telling me wine people said that. Cat pee on a gooseberry
cat
bush?
pee's got like ammonia,
In
right?
fact,
so there's an alcohol-y sort of, there's a nose thing going on with the cat pee.
Boxwood is a better descriptor, and once people realized that not everybody thought cat pee was a good thing to have in wine,
for the majority of everyone, I just want to say I can't believe what I'm hearing right now. And also, Crosby, way to chime in and be like, the ammonia. For real? I can't believe you know that much about cat pee. That's probably the most shocking.
You only need your cat to pee on your backpack once before school to know about the smell of cat pee. And I'll leave it at that.
Fair enough. I never had a cat, and that makes a lot of sense. And actually, I should understand this because I literally had to clean up dog vomit an hour and a half ago, so I know what that's like. Center console, it's right next to the car seat. Anyways,
so it's funny. There was a winery that came out with a label called "Cat Pee on a Gooseberry Bush," early 2000s, and it had a cat on the label peeing on a gooseberry bush.
Can
It
you
was a
imagine
kitschy,
the
fun
chain
little.
where people were like, is this a mistake? Because I'm about to print 300,000 of these.
Right.
Like,
I
That's
don't remember it
incredible.
lasting very
That's
long.
incredible.
It didn't stick around. I can't remember the producer either. But that was the fun phrase for New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc when they're just taking over the world. It's easier to just say New Zealand is a little riper, Sauvignon Blanc, whereas Sancerre is a little more bracing
okay.
and more mineral and more citrus instead of ripe fruit. As a grape grows, and depending on the climate, it goes from more citrusy and floral, and as it ripens, it starts getting more tropical flavors all the way across the spectrum, and that's from the ripening of the grape.
So when you
But
say
then
the New
there's
Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is riper and hence more tropical?
yes,
Okay.
yes,
I mean, I'll just throw it out there. When you mentioned some of these wines, I have had them. I'd have them usually if I would go out to lunch with my dad and we'd be at a nice cafe and I'd be having something like a chicken sandwich and ciabatta with like sun-dried tomatoes and goat cheese. I'm in the 90s right now when goat cheese and sun-dried tomatoes and chicken sandwiches were a big deal. And we would have like, one of these bracing wines and they'd be this white. And it was to me like a bit crisp and basically not like a lot of like fruity this or that. And then when I think about those New Zealand wines, New Zealand Sauvignon Blancs, they're in general pretty similar compared to like that buttery Chardonnay, which I find it such a wonderful contrast and a relief from, right? But there's something about that New Zealand wine you said like it's kind of cocktaily. You can just drink that. You know what I mean? But like these other ones, like you can drink them, but they're super light. You know what I mean? They're more refreshing, and they are killer with food because it doesn't like I don't know. It just plays so well. You know what I mean? It's like when my dog behaves. You're like, man, I just want this to happen. Just chill, man. Just chill. Just lay down. Don't throw up in the car. Just chill.
So you bring up a really good point about consistency across a area. So New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc is mainly Marlborough until you get up into that $20 to $30 range. If you're below $20, all those wines are going to taste fairly similar. You don't really have to worry about the producer. You can get higher quality Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, spend a little more money, and it is another level. But in general, these are consistent. In some place like the Loire Valley, there are producers that aren't as good. Their plots aren't as nice. There's not the consistency of ripening. In places like this, I like to pay attention to the importer because the importer bases all their success on that importer's name. So someone like Kermit Lynch in the Loire Valley, you're going to get something very, very good. So I did. I bought Kermit Lynch, Bone Imports, as in the region of Burgundy. So Beaune. Peter Weingart, I've been familiar with for 30 years. His wines are always consistent, very good. I have what else?
So Kermit Lynch, Peter Weingart. They all sound like villains.
They have a monocle.
And then Rosenthal.
Peter Weingart especially has a monocle. He has two monocles.
He's from Pennsylvania. I think he's like outside of Pittsburgh. Yeah. And then some Neil Rosenthal. I got one from him. He's
I thought you made that up. But that's a real name too. Wait, this is cool. So Neil Rosen, what a fascinating way to identify what wine is worth the money. The importer. That is the real move. I would call it a tip, but tips are just like cheap things people call. That's a hotline. This is insider baseball right here, baby. So Kermit Lynch.
Peter Weingart. Neil Rosenthal.
Very cool. Now, what you brought up something super fascinating. You basically said like, $20, you should be okay with a Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand. What about this stuff? And when we're
25
talking
and
about
under?
Loire
So
Valley.
everything here that I bought today is 25 and under. I
It's
can't
fire.
remember.
I so
There
apply
might
this to
be,
music, like like producers and
yeah,
directors of
25 and
movies.
under.
People just watch the movie, but then you find a geek about someone. I'll be like, of course that song was good. So and so produced it, or of course that movie was good. So and so directed it, and most people don't have any clue who's producing or directing a movie or a song. So this is really fascinating stuff. I love it.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
I totally forgot. I have a Louis Dresner, which is another. He's kind of over on the edge towards the natural wine movement, biodynamic, organic. They can be a little more funky, but this Muscadet, which I'll get to towards the end. This is Sur Lis, so it's on the lees, but it's a single plot. And
Yeah, I gotta
probably
ask, as
because
you said, this wine stuff.
So much.
There's so much to it. It's so by far so dense. What did you say? You said this whole thing a lot. Single lot. What does that mean? Single lot.
Oh, so single vineyard. So you go over to some farmer's house and you see his little vineyard over to the right. That's his. He might even have a name for that vineyard. Some of these guys might farm 15, 20 different plots. You're hedging your bets again. You're making sure that if there's variations in the weather that
Right.
year, hail hits over there on that hill,
Right.
across a
Like
couple
wine
miles
guys
from
are
you,
they're
you're
commissioning
protected.
grapes from other places, right? Often, so a single lot would be a guy that's sticking to his own thing, mainly. Okay,
Yeah, and I can't remember. I think the Jasnieres from Kermit Lynch, which I'll get to. This is a dry Chenin Blanc. I think this guy only rents. He farms other people's vineyards, and I want to say it's like 9 to 12 different plots.
Mhm.
I'd have to go back and really study on him, but he just farms other people's lands, takes the grapes, and makes amazing wine. There's no way most people even know how to pronounce that, or where it is. It's kind of north. I'm
let's
jumping all
focus
over
in.
the place, so
Okay.
I'll back off and then we'll go.
No.
We'll go across this.
I'm gonna drive it because this is something super fascinating. Is the
Yeah.
importer, because
Yeah.
I'm looking at that wine. It's a little fuzzy, but I can make it out. Can you
Jasnieres.
show who's the importer for that one?
Kermit Lynch.
Okay,
This
let's
is
show me a Rosenthal. Let's bring in Rosenthal.
so Neil's wine is
Neil.
the
Neil.
I like how he calls him Neil.
Chinon, I believe.
I want to see Neil. And what I really want to see is the label.
This is Rare Wine Company.
You
Hold
put
on.
that one back.
Hold on.
And
Yeah,
as long
I'll
I
give it
want
to
to see, I wanted to see these two labels, and the reason why I want to see them is when I look at this stuff in the store, I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I think this is the real, issue here is, you look at like a wine like
It
that,
looks
and you're like,
legit.
well,
Right,
this
there's a
looks
lot of
like
old
pretty
school
old
labels,
school.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Seems like it just looks old and Frenchy. It looks Frenchy. It looks old. But now I won't have to sweat. Because I'll be honest, I'm in the wine store and I'm just literally like a slave to
You
the
just don't know.
sticker. I'm a slave to the sticker. And it's like, maybe, is it cool? Is it too cool? Do I want something that just looks like grandpa would be like, yeah, drink that. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, we're not trying to do anything too fancy. Now I'm going to flip, I'm going to read that back, and I'm going to look at who the importer is now. Because that...
Especially for a region like the Loire Valley, where, it's expansive. There's lots of different regions. There's lots of different grapes. And then within that region, I don't know how many producers are in Sancerre, but I have 2 right here. There's a lot of producers of Sancerre. You don't know unless you tried the wines. And unless you have a wine shop that you completely trust, that you work with on a regular basis, and that person's tastes are comparable to yours,
Right.
it's easier to go with an importer. And I lied. I don't have Rosenthal. I have 2 Rare Wine Company, and I have a Bone
He asked for
import.
this.
I asked for Rosenthal.
I got a bunch of Kermit Lynch. Yes, I got a bunch of Kermit Lynch.
Let's get on topic.
So let's
Here
go.
with Steve
Let's talk
with
real
your
quick, and we'll
timeline, because
work our
I
way.
think we're distracting you probably. Okay.
Oh
Okay.
no, we're good.
Will you hold those up for
Let's go
a
back to
second, a beat
Sancerre
longer,
and
Steve,
Pouilly
with those
Fume.
labels?
Why are these different?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Here
there
you go.
go.
So here's the Pouilly Fume.
Okay.
Fume meaning smoke. There's an old school reference that all Pouilly Fumes have gunflint flavor to it. I think that's a little different these
There's
days
just
with
so much war
ripening
in
and
France
viticulture
too, so that's
better
probably
and
a
global
good jump
warming.
off point for
Yeah. And then let's go Sancerre to Sancerre. You might not be able to see
Okay,
this.
cool.
We
And this will be
will
less
post
fuzzy.
all the wines that
Yeah.
I bought.
See, that's kind of cool and modern, and then the other one has got like kind of
Yeah.
a dragon.
This is old school.
Yeah, look
I
at
got
that.
this from a company called Somm Select. He's a master somm. I think he's got a whole group of people that taste. They found this winery. I've bought 2 or 3 vintages. I buy every time they release. They are the importer. Somm Select is out of Napa. They send you an email, a
Oh,
daily
so that's
email.
a Sancerre that's a New World Sancerre.
No. So the importer is based in.
Oh, I see.
So this is a totally different importer. It's an importer called Somm Select. It's a daily email that you'll get. You look at it, you decide if you want it. You buy 1 bottle, 6 bottles, whatever. I always buy 6 bottles every time this vintage releases. This is excellent. I have a little 17 left. This is 18. By the way, this is 2017. The Pouilly Fume is 2019. The other fun thing about these wines, these Sauvignon Blancs are going to
Like
last
inside
a long
of a
time
wine fridge
and get better. They will. Yeah, you should. Yeah, you don't
is a
want to put
normal
this sitting on
fridge
the
gonna be
kitchen
too
counter and
cold?
age it for 10 years.
Okay.
Yes, normal fridges, and the big problem with a normal fridge is the
interesting.
humidity. It's too dry. It'll dry out the cork. So you could throw in a bunch of screw cap wine in there and it would be fine, but it's also a little too cold. Your refrigerator is usually set around 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
Mhm.
The wine fridges are 50 to 55.
Okay.
So, but you don't have to age these. These are more, for fun if you want to
Wow.
age them. These Sancerres are going to last 10 years easy. There's a lot of acidity. There's a lot of freshness. There's a tartness on the palate. It's more citrus than riper jalapeno or tropical fruit like you would get down in New
I was
Zealand.
gonna say, what foods do we pair with
And
this? What
you
foods do we
reference
yeah.
cheese. So the other great thing, yes, the other great thing about the
We have
Loire
some good
Valley is the cheese. The cheese
cows
is
in France.
Ooh.
there's tons of cheeses. So this is great. Ali referenced goat cheese with some cool little bracing white wine with his dad at a restaurant.
Yeah.
That's perfect. But this will also go up against a little more complex food. Anything with sauces, it's going to stand up. There's plenty of acidity. And if you like bracing wines, you can cocktail with these.
Can you
These are also great
explain
with
that
seafood.
term to me a bit? Bracing. Like
Maybe
I
I
kind of understand it. The more you say it, the more I'm like, I don't know what you mean anymore. What does bracing
Yeah.
mean?
So when you drink something with a lot of acidity, it has that tartness on the side of your mouth, makes your mouth water, and it's bracing is
makes you
just
wanna
like
eat more
it
food?
lifts everything in your
Does it
mouth.
make you wanna
It's
eat, like,
not
more of the
like those
lunch or
California
dinner that you're
Chardonnays.
eating?
What's
Right,
that?
that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And actually, talking about these wines,
Speaking
I
about
can
it.
taste them right now, and my mouth is kind of watering like I'm ready to eat, and I want a glass of Sancerre, and I'm going to kick back and chill.
I think Wimpy had this problem when you talk about
So,
hamburgers.
Steve, too, like, I guess
Yes.
would, like, you mentioned the cheese, so I guess you would probably want the steak or the meat products that are creating these cheese in the same region to have with these wines. I'm assuming all this stuff goes together. Well, like you
Mhm. That's the easiest
Okay.
way to always think about food pairings and wine. What are they eating in that region where that wine was produced?
Right.
because I don't know what was first, the chicken or the egg, but usually the wines and how they make them and drink
Yeah.
them pair well
Because
with
I'm
the
curious
food
about the
that they're
oyster thing,
making
for
and eating,
example, which you're
Okay.
getting to, which is like,
especially the
I don't think of
cheese.
oysters
So
or maybe coastal stuff as being as cheese oriented. So I wonder if those wines go less with the cheese in the Oysterville, for
right,
lack of a better word.
very
Oh,
good
wow.
Yeah.
point. I don't even know if they make cheese over in that region of the Western Loire Valley. I'm not sure because I just think of oysters and I love oysters. I could eat 2 dozen oysters and a bottle of Muscadet. That's the other thing.
Okay.
These aren't super ripe or
12.
super alcoholic wines. So 12 and a half, 13. The
Oh, wow.
Muscadet, I bet, should be
Much
closer
lower.
to 11.
It's weird. This stuff's
I'm gonna
so
have to put my
complex, but then
glasses
there's like
for this.
there's like a 1 + 1
Um,
equals 2 thing. It's like you're sort of like, oh, the
12.
cows in the region, the wine, the grapes that are around it, the cheese that's being made from the cows, and then if on the coast there's going to be seafood, or like that, So it's like I know wine is so complicated
Yeah.
for people, but there's
Yeah.
also such a simple formula to it on a level if you really get down to brass tacks. So.
Yeah. And
So
it's really important to find a great wine shop. That's how Ali and I met. I worked at
So
K&L.
if
He
I
would
went to
shop there. We
K&L
would
and I
go
said,
through
"Hey,
just a
I want
laundry
something
list of
from the
wines.
Loire
yeah.
Valley," like the guy at the wine store should just know exactly where to take you. Yeah, high times.
Yeah, yeah. And you're down in the OC now, so you have High Times. Just go over to High Times. Say, hey, I'm here to. I want to try some Loire Valley wines. I want a nice Sancerre.
So let me throw this out there. I think this is where the challenge comes in. Is like especially like French wine because of the identity we associate with French and food and French and wine. It's the good stuff. It's sophisticated. It's elegant. It can be, frankly, a little intimidating, right? And I think one of the things that we've had some fun with has been going, hey, when we
Right.
had that lambic beer with an In-N-Out or drive-through burger. So I kind of want to challenge you this. Like, I get it. Like, you're in France. They making the cheese. Let's go to the western part of France. They be shucking the oysters. Everything's Ernest Hemingway and all awesome and lovely. But let's just, take one of these bracing wines, right? A Sancerre, a Pouilly Fume. And actually, yes. So out of these wines, I'll go Sancerre because that was the one that would be like that. Like, let's have a glass of wine with lunch. That would, and
Yeah,
if there was a Sancerre, I would get that. It was just
yeah.
nice and a bit refreshing, if you will, and something you could kind of enjoy. It felt like a quality kind of wine, right? What else could I have in there besides, like some sort of, say I'm not at the bistro, you know what I mean?
Right.
What's like another kind of food,
A, s-
perhaps more
a
on the
steak,
comfort
a
scale, perhaps
roasted
something
chicken, or
just way off and freaking out of the Philippines. Yeah, what else could you have with this stuff?
I wouldn't go over all the way to steak, but you could easily do. Fried chicken's going to, as long as the fried chicken's not Nashville hot,
Okay.
it's going to be great.
Kentucky
Just
Fried.
A
straight
chicken
fried
sandwich.
chicken.
Yeah,
Classic
yeah,
fried chicken.
yeah.
Okay.
Chicken sandwich. Yeah, roasted chickens, even stuffed with gravies, more comfort food.
Uh-huh.
Country fried steak and a Sancerre would go really well.
Okay.
You could even get into the pork dishes easily with those. Um,
All right.
with
So
steak,
bad.
I want something with a little more muscle and tannins and acidity
I
to
mean, I
go
feel
with
like
the
a lot of
steak.
people are simply just going to say this. You mean a red? I mean, I think it's fair to say up until
Yeah.
this point, all the wines we're talking about are white wines, right?
Yeah, so we're on white so far. We'll move over one little quadrant to Vouvray and that Jasnieres, the one that I was telling you from
Okay.
Kermit Lynch. But this is all Chenin Blanc, different grape.
Mm.
Still high acidity, more neutral in flavor, more honeyed and straw. So not ripe, not overpowering tropical fruit flavors. Chenin Blanc just has a lot of acidity, and it's made in a whole range from dry, medium dry, sweet, and then super sweet. These do not say it on the label, which that is one thing about French wine, and then you can probably put this into even Germany and Italy and all European wines. They don't really tell you. They should say sec on here, so SEC, meaning
Interesting.
dry, but they don't. So you have to look it up or talk to the.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the internet, you can look up every one of these wines while you're standing there and say, oh, this is dry. I want this. Unless you like medium dry or you want sweet, you can also find those too.
Okay.
So this grape is Chenin Blanc. We're just one little region over from Sancerre and Pouilly Fume. You can just look for
I feel like Chenin
Vouvray.
Blanc was sort of
If you can
introduced to
see
me. I've done
that,
quite a
there we
few wine
go.
excursions. I've been to Marlborough, New Zealand, for example, and done wine stuff out there. And I feel like Chenin Blanc was taught to me as, just sort of a step up from maybe the basic American ones, Chardonnay. If you want to sort of expand your knowledge of whites, Chenin Blanc was kind of a good starting point to
Yeah,
get a little deeper. At least from my experience. I don't know if that.
yeah.
Okay.
It, it
That's
It took off in
I
South
probably
Africa,
heard of it
and they called it
in
Steen for a little while,
Stellenbosch
but now it's
in
Chenin
South
Blanc on
Africa
all the
when I went there.
labels.
Yeah, that's what it was. Okay,
Oh,
that makes sense.
yes, you did. Of course. Yeah, because it was the white grape for South Africa and it took off. And Chenin Blanc is the wine geek, that sommelier that, runs over to the table and just wants to talk to you about something super cool. Like that story I told you of the LA restaurant where he told me,
Pedestrian.
we had an Assertico. And he said, that Assertico
Keep
is
it going.
very pedestrian. Yeah.
Okay.
So that Somme would be all about Chenin Blanc.
I
It's
thought I
kind
was
of the
onto
wine
something
geek
there.
wine right now. It's the
Interesting. All
yeah,
right. So Chenin Blanc is.
yeah. You are.
So
You're
let me
in the
ask you
know.
this:
You're
as
in
we
the
moved into this wine, we kind of said throughout there, Sancerre would be great with like. Now I'm thinking like cold roast chicken, right? What am I eating with the
Interesting.
Chenin Blanc? Yeah.
Chicken
chicken
salad.
salad sandwich.
That's got mayonnaise in it and stuff, right?
Ooh,
It's got a little
Yeah,
more
yummy.
umami than
yeah,
a
yeah. You could get
typical.
into a little
Yeah.
more
Okay.
rich. Hmm. Yeah, yeah. And that's really because the acidity in these wines, I mean, there's a lot of acid in these. These are even maybe even a little more bracing, or at least the perception of bracing, because the fruit over here in the Sauvignon Blanc might feel a little riper on the palate in Sancerre and Pouilly Fume than in Vouvray or Jasnieres. Um, I forgot to tell you an interesting thing about Sauvignon Blanc. There's some weird qualities of Sauvignon Blanc that it's not always just the region. There's these precursors
Mm.
inside the grapes that specific yeast strains will bring out. So, and there's a whole
Where
world
does yeast
group
get involved in the
symposium
process?
on Sauvignon Blanc, and all the geek Sauvignon Blanc producers. It somehow brings out a
Huh.
specific quality because the yeast can change. They can be cultivated or natural, or they'll bring out that precursor that is sitting inside the Sauvignon Blanc grape and bring out a specific flavor. So really, it's just manipulation to a degree. Like, oh, well, I grew this Sauvignon
Oh,
Blanc over here, but I want it to taste like this.
interesting.
I can throw in this yeast strain to bring out that flavor precursor. So there is some other cool things about Sauvignon Blanc that
Okay.
people around the world work with. That's why you also want a traditional producer. But Sancerre and Pouilly Fumé are going to have a little more richness, past the, it'll be citrus, but a little more ripe perception on the palate. These Chenin Blancs are going to feel definitely more elegant, a little more neutral and linear with this great
Wow.
acidity. These wines will easily last 20 years in the cellar.
Wow.
and totally change and become more honeyed and more textured on the palate. But perfect to sit around and also food wine. Chicken salad sandwich with one of these would be amazing.
So I got to ask you. You said I'm gonna keep this around for 20 years. Not sure if I'm gonna have a chicken salad sandwich with the wine I've been hanging on to for 2 decades.
No,
Can you?
no.
What about? I'm gonna just get crazy here. Maybe this would be weird. What about salmon sushi? It's like salmon again.
You could take some of those. We could go back to our
Subtle food.
conversation on
Subtle food.
delicate. It wasn't the word you used, but
Subtle.
subtle. Yeah, subtle and delicate sushi first comes to mind. And Chenin Blanc or an aged Chenin Blanc or a Sancerre are perfect with sushi. I could eat sushi and seafood all day long.
That's wild.
Every day.
Because
Yeah.
the assumption is like beer and sake, beer and sake, beer and sake.
Oh, no.
That's
no.
what I wanted to get into something different. And I feel like
My-
salmon sushi is like, you cannot even be that much of a sushi freak and be like,
Yeah.
Steve,
have some salmon sushi.
Steve, would you
Yeah,
say
I
that
mean,
Chenin
all right.
Blanc
Toro.
goes with a greasier,
something
richer
bluefin or-
sort of cuisine? Would that go with more of the fine dining quality of stuff? Okay. Yeah.
Oh, fine dining for sure. Yeah. Some fish dish, on the second or third course in
Yeah,
a 5
nice.
course meal where it's got a really
That's right.
nice
'Cause I
sauce.
feel like again,
Chenin Blanc
maybe
would
to
be
get
amazing
too
with that.
simplified with stuff, right? Is that maybe if you
Yeah.
have a more subtle dish, maybe just sort of a roast chicken, like Ali said, you might want a more flavorful wine. Whereas if maybe you're doing a really fine dining thing where they're going to probably put
Yeah.
too much butter or whatever, something where it just has so much flavor, you might want to have a Chenin Blanc sort of vibe to it, a more acidic. If I had to oversimplify. Okay.
Yep.
You know what?
Yep.
I'll toss this
Yeah.
one. I bet a good like fancy lobster roll with tarragon. I bet.
Oh my God.
Good with this.
Yes.
Boom,
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
in the zone. He was like,
Yeah.
"We're gonna keep it linear." You know what I mean? I was like, "What does that mean?" And I'm like, "Oh, I get it. It's like it's not gonna get too cray. We're not trying to get too cray." And it's like, if you have like, for me, when I've had really good lobster rolls, and I'll be honest, they're already so expensive. You get the chef one anyways. The ones I've had with tarragon are amazing because
Mhm.
like you just really want to stop and say, you're eating something that's expensive, it's precious, it doesn't happen often, and you just want it to just be, you don't want to like jack it up. You don't want to be like,
No.
oh, honey, I put A1 on the Wagyu. You know what I mean? Even if you like A1, it's like, no, you shouldn't have turned it into that. Like, make it seem as precious. You know what I mean? Like, really be, with a very gentle touch. I feel like that's what you're saying with that Chenin Blanc. Like, it's a gentle
Yes.
touch wine. It's not going to get up
Yeah.
and jack up your food, and it's not to be eating with food that'll jack up your palate. It's just like you're just walking this thin little line, walking that thin red line.
I've been craving lobster rolls lately because I've had about 3 or 4 people talk to me about lobster rolls. They were just on the East Coast. One guy, he was just back in Maine to see family, and he's like, "We ate lobster rolls every single day. They were all $30, but who cares?" How is a whole
Preparation.
lobster, less expensive than a lobster roll? I still haven't figured that out.
Well,
I know it's
I'll tell you, a whole lobster. First of all, you're buying a bunch of stuff you can't eat. A good lobster roll
true.
will be the claw meat, which is
Yeah.
by far the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
True.
I mean, it's like they're doing all the work, Like it's. Although I will say this, my hot take. I think if you're just talking about picked over meat, don't sleep on that Dungeness crab. That is delicious. I almost think there's more flavor in the Dungeness crab. And lobster's just a thing where it's like, I mean, there's red lobster. You know what I mean? Everyone knows. It's the one food that you just are supposed to dunk in butter. Like that's considered the way to go. But Yeah, I just think the lobster roll, it's like you're paying for that labor. You're getting hopefully nothing but the good stuff, and it is that claw. That claw. Once someone said, "Well, the claw is the best part," and whenever I've just let that hunk of meat just slip out of that shell, and the thing is, like, the tail's more firm, isn't it? Right? That claw is just like it's a little softer. You just get that stuff, just claw meat, tossed in like fresh aioli and tarragon. Bring on the Chenin Blanc. Yeah, it's gonna cost you.
Chenin.
And
to be honest,
Steve,
I never
how are
feel
we doing on your
disappointed after
timeline?
spending
Are we
$30
covering the
on a
wines
lobster roll.
in
I'm
enough
like,
time?
oh my
Okay.
God, that was so freaking good.
I just
I'll
wanted to
tell
make
you
sure.
this though.
Oh, we're good. We'll move over inside the same. Yeah, inside the same region is a red grape. So you're doing Chenin Blanc, but you also have Chinon. So this is Cabernet Franc, the same Cabernet Franc that grows down in Bordeaux. It's a totally different flavor profile, maybe less olivey.
Is this something that someone could buy if they
I've never heard of that
afford the pricier red
Should
wines
not
in the
surprise
region?
you.
Sweet.
Yeah, these are 25, 30, depending on the producer. So you're still in that nice ballpark. Anything below 30, I think I'm not going to call it every day because some people might only want to drink a $10 wine on a Tuesday, but you're still not out a lot of money. You can still, like we talk about all the time with preserving wine after opening, you can have a few glasses of this during the whole week when you only want a little small glass. These are different though. So less fruit, again, more delicate. You're going to have more herbaceousness from a Chinon than ripe, blackberry or cherry fruit. You're going to get some red fruit still, but you're going to get some tannins and you're going to get some acidity.
Can you I know, I feel like I probably asked this a zillion times, but I'll always ask it because it's like I get it and I don't get it. What does tannin taste like? Is that like what coffee has? Does coffee have tannins? Is that
that drying sensation on the outside of your tongue or inside of your gums when you're drinking a Bordeaux or a tannic red?
Got it.
That astringency is tannin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So with these, you want, unless you age it. I just saw a 1989 Chinon that was released, like a library release to a specific importer. It sold out immediately. It was only $65 or $70. I was working, so I didn't get a chance to buy one. Chinon will last a very, very long time.
I haven't heard of it either.
What are you eating that with? I'm frankly, I'm a little. I can't believe I've never heard of this wine. What am I eating? Yeah.
So with this, pork, and you can go right into red meats. You could have this with a steak, easy.
What kind of which steak? Which steak?
Fattier.
What are we talking?
I like fattier steak with this.
I'm stupid,
but I love pork dishes with this too.
With steak, especially.
Yeah. No, like a ribeye. Ribeye.
This is a salt and pepper ribeye
with no
gotcha.
A1. We're not throwing A1 on this ribeye.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I love pork, duck, a duck breast with this.
Okay.
And I love duck. There you have a range, but you do have to be slightly aware that this is going to be more of a astringent sensation on your palate. It's not going to be opulent and fruity and rich. It's going to be more herbaceous and subdued. And you want to aerate this. You're going to throw it in the decanter. You're going to have your nice meal, and you're going to enjoy it.
So, you know what? I got to say this. I'm going to throw it out there. Just get out of the fancy pants world we're in. France, red wine. You know what I think? If I had to pick the fast food burger to go with this, because you said ribeye rich.
Yeah.
And I can't believe I'm choosing this because I know it doesn't taste good. But bacon cheeseburger, I was thinking Baconator, which is bacon cheeseburger is just like basically when you order that, you've just
I had that for dinner last night. I had one of those.
You know what I mean? Like it's like really like you're doing this to yourself.
Well,
like
no,
that,
but
like a double,
a fancier version. I had like a bacon and blue, like a bacon and blue cheese and mushroom and caramelized onion sort of thing. All right. Well, I just thought of bacon and burger.
Oh.
Yeah.
That is not a baconator.
Yeah.
But yeah,
This would go well.
it's so
Yeah.
over the top.
Nice.
But okay, cool. So that would
Yeah.
be
Yeah, you could have a big, fatty, greasy burger with this wine easily.
I've never had a bacon.
And then one little region over, the same
Not
grape.
once, but I had a bacon.
Another
I had a
weird
bacon
little wine
cheeseburger that was
in
pretty.
Loire. Anjou.
I needed that. I needed Steve's wine with it. for sure.
Anjou.
I want to go eat one now.
Yeah. You know what? That the movie Sideways really opened a lot of non-wine people's eyes. That what do you mean you would take a really nice wine, pour it into a paper cup, and sit in a fast food burger joint and eat a big greasy burger? It's about the experience, the interplay between the food and the wine. There's no right pairing. Like it's not. There are very few absolutes in wine. And there's definitely very few absolutes in food and wine pairings. You can have some generic overviews. You don't want to have a big, giant tannic wine with delicate fish. I mean, there's going to be a chemical reaction there anyway that's going to make it, I think it produces like an irony flavor. I mean, you wouldn't want to do that. There's no complementary thing going on. But that movie opened a lot of people's eyes because non-wine people love that movie. They quote it all the time. They felt like they got some insider information because the wine world is not the most accepting to outsiders, or at least from the entry point. People
Let's not be pedestrian about it.
Bingo. They're not
enemy
welcome.
Okay, so Chinon, that's interesting. And then you said Cab Franc. What? Let's talk about
And then we're going just one region over. In this region, you also have some other white and some sweet wines being made. It's just one little bend in the river down. Anjou.
Never heard of it.
You can spend a lot less money for an Anjou, a quality Anjou, because most people don't even know what this is.
Is that a region or the grape?
The region. The grape is Cabernet Franc. Okay. Again, different soils, different exposures to the sun, different placements on the river and the vineyards. Chinon is just better known. Wine geeks love it. It's a little more expensive. You can just go right downriver, find this Anjou. You're still going to get a lot of the same characteristics in the wine. Yeah. You're still less opulent fruit, more herbaceous, a little more tannins. Not quite the tannic structure of a Chinon, but you're still getting some tannins.
Still ribeye. Still ribeye.
You could still go all kinds of directions with this. I have cocktailed with this wine, but I don't mind a little more astringency and, I don't mind that. And a little more bracing acidity. I can kick back and relax and enjoy it. Go back to the duck. Any sort of duck confit in this. Yeah, any sort of confits of any meat.
How about the poor man's version? Carnitas torta.
Oh, yeah. You could have this with a less spicier version.
Yeah, that's with the torta, hopefully you've diminished some of the pop of the
torta. You don't have to go, just because it's from France and you never heard of the wine, you don't have to immediately go to a Michelin style dish.
You think it might be
you can easily have this with everyday food.
You know what I mean? It's like I haven't had duck in a long time.
Yeah, greasy carnitas and this would be great.
Okay, good to know.
So instead of sitting at the burger joint, you could slip this wine in under your in your backpack.
You know what? Take it to the
We're getting a little long in the tooth on this episode.
Yes,
yes.
Okay,
right
great.
there you go. There you go. Ooh,
so we got one last wine, and we've kind of talked about this. This was a special find because usually I think they should be on 2019 vintage. I'm guessing most people in the store didn't even know what a Muscadet was.
Could you hold that up again, Steve? Could we get another
from
beat
that
of
Louis
the
Dresner
label?
guy who is
move
a little
it over
closer
to your right, I think.
Biodynamic
Awesome.
and earthy and natural. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So this is a 2015. It's already got about 4 years in the bottle of sitting in a nice wine store at temperature. It's not seeing light. It's not being exposed to heat or temperature variations. This is actually a single vineyard from this producer. This producer makes, a whole bunch of different wines. The key, it's way over on the coast. This is not ripe at all. This is going to be more cantaloupe, melon. You have the acidity levels again.
Interesting.
Oysters. I mean, this is and salinity. There's always salinity in this wine, like a mineral component to the wine.
Salt there. Wow.
Yeah. And it's not getting salt and mineral from the ground into the grape. It's a sensation of minerality.
Right.
This with oysters, you just say, keep bringing a dozen oysters, and I am going to kick back
What
and
a
drink
tap.
this one.
This, like lobster rolls every day, not oysters like it's a buffet. So that was a Muscadet, right?
Yeah, Muscadet.
And that's a white wine?
And then
Yep, white wine,
It looks like-
all the way over on the western side, so it's right there
That's
towards
grape,
the estuary.
Right? The grape is
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
it's right where the estuary of the Loire River is dumping out into the Atlantic Ocean.
That is cool. When the river meets the sea.
Green ones.
Just like, do you remember what wine was just like that? Albarino. When we did the Spanish whites, Albarino were just the system basically five estuaries,
Right.
but that grape is totally different than the Muscadet. Same sort of geographical locations, but different latitudes, different climate, different weather. The Albarino is a little richer, more alcohol, more tropical. The Muscadet is more linear again, more melon.
Steve, you mentioned
fruit,
ripeness.
and
are all the
a little more acidity,
are the
embracing
grapes
less
being
alcohol.
harvested
That's only
at different
12%.
times in different regions, or is it all sort of the same growth period? Is that something that you know, or does it even apply? Okay.
Oh yeah.
Gotcha.
So the sugar levels are changing as the longer it sits on the vine. So it's a winemaker decision. Should I leave this on the vine a little bit longer, get riper? It will change the entire complexion of the wine after it's made.
This is
Or do
part
I
of the,
pick it a little early and we have more
hedging your
acidity
bets
and we have a
sort of
little less
thing
fruit,
that
a
you
little
mentioned.
less alcohol?
Is the hedging your
and
bets sort
it's a
of
little more
thing you were?
elegant. That's a completely
Oh, that was more
winemaker
weather
decision,
based. I think
even
you were
how
saying.
they.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
What's that? Well, yeah, a little, yeah, yeah. But in a region like this, who knows? There might be rains towards the end of the year. Bordeaux always has that issue. You better get those grapes off the vine before the big rains come. So yes, in a way, you're hedging your
Does
bets.
that, with this part of the world and the weather, does that raise the price of the wine? Because hey, you never know if you're gonna be able to.
Probably these
crank out a good
importers, all
batch.
these guys we talked about earlier with the
Usually a
monocles, they're
little,
probably the ones
and then the
bumping the
producers
prices
are
up,
also
right?
producing much smaller quantities.
No. Peter Weinberg.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
True.
But
Rosenthal and his.
some of these regions aren't well known. Sancerre, everybody knows Sancerre.
Okay.
Yeah. So Sancerre is automatically, doesn't even matter the quality of the vintage. Sancerre is going to be a little more expensive. The difference between the Chinon and the Anjou,
Steve,
same grape,
if you had
different bend in the river,
if we had to
different
wrap this up,
location,
because this
but no
is
one knows
definitely our
Anjou.
longest
So
episode
Anjou's
yet.
a
So I
little
wonder if
less
we should
expensive
wrap it up. I wonder if we
usually
hit
than
all your
Chenin.
topics. I wonder we can go long, but yeah, I mean, this is fascinating.
Okay.
You mentioned something about this being a part one
Yep.
on a level as well.
Nope, we're
or
good.
We might need to
We
tap
hit the
into
whole
this more.
river.
We'll obviously tap into this more on our IG Live when we do it. But okay, gotcha.
We'll tap
So
into
today
other
we got the
great
Loire
river
Valley.
wine growing
All right.
rivers. So wine growing regions that have a river going through it. Boom, boom.
Yeah, this is great. No, it's great.
Yep.
I want
And episode 1, we touched on the Duero
and
in
keep it
Spain.
nice
So
and tight yet informative,
Yeah.
and so I'm gauging how we covered your topic today. It's a lot of fun.
yeah, we're good. I think we've covered everything. This is fun. Diving into these regions.
I think Ollie and
there's
I
a lot
have a
of
couple of
tangents
different
and a lot of
wine
wormholes that you can start
varietals
running
to try
when you
that
start
we've never
talking
heard
about
of, because
wine,
there's a couple that I've
especially
never
in a
even
regional
dabbled in.
capacity.
Chinon, Anjou, and I think once I knock
But
down both
especially in
those bottles,
Austin,
you're
like
gonna see me as
you have so much
a
awesome
guy
stuff
living
down
in a
there to
van
pair
down
with,
by the river.
with
Got a
some
lot
of
of
these.
wine.
If you pick one of these random bottles that Steve mentioned, you could probably.
I think that's why I kept kind of like going, okay, well, what else? It's so interesting because, French food's kind of, generally speaking, through trends, a bit on the decline. There's not, there was a time where like bistros, there were lots of bistros, you know what I mean? You just don't, it's hard. Steak frites, they don't happen in my world too often. I also think comfort food and kind of a broader global palette is kind of, there's so much Asian and Mexican
to see how we can
kind of
put the American
quote
twist,
fine dining or these places. So I was
the
trying
West
to
Coast,
like
Southwest American twist on the pairings with these in the weeks to come, as we sort of are processing all this information Steve gave us. Yeah. Sushi is a great one. That's a good, because everyone has sushi. Who does not eat sushi? Everyone has sushi.
Oysters. There's, and I think sushi was a great way to do it well. Sushi's big. And I think there's something to be said about actually finding a good wine.
And I think Americans are probably having sushi a little more at home these days.
You know what I mean? You get the really good bottle of sake,
it's empty, and I spent $100. It would make sense to find wines that, because it's great to have a cold beer or a sake at a sushi restaurant, but if you're going to do takeout sushi, I'd say wine's probably the game to play.
Yeah. So I just had a really good sushi meal a couple weeks ago.
Boom.
Glass number 1 was a champagne, and glass number 2 was a Chenin Blanc from the Loire.
There you go.
So
Chenin Blanc and sushi.
Let's try and wrap this one up.
That's the eat this, drink that, straight up.
So informative.
Yes.
Steve, you're a secret weapon of knowledge, and I always have so much to wrap my mind around, and I see Ollie's mind spinning a little too. So this is great. I love it. I love learning all this new stuff and the complexity of it, how to maybe try and simplify it as well. So this was really great. So
this is fun.
Yeah,
awesome.
This is a pleasure, to meet, to have the nice guy Sam for a change.
Or like you mentioned on IG Live yesterday, Steve might just be a cop this whole time, and we don't even know.
I don't deserve to be in the same room as him or her.
Right. Yeah, I was working yesterday. I was staking out some house yesterday.
It was true. It was the dash cam. Hey, it's just a career here in California State.
Yeah. I'm really an
Steve
FBI agent.
911, and he's got the little shorts on from Reno 911.
Steve and his body cam, like drinking wine.
That's an old school reference.
Dude,
that might have
all
to
right,
be
well,
an
let's wrap it up,
Instagram
guys.
live.
Thank you so much for another wonderful episode. We are making it under the hour mark by 15
that was just
seconds.
my phone.
So I'm going to give myself props for that one. Anyways, talk to you guys soon.